Hi there, and welcome to today's webinar on career pathing and is it a time for a change? It's interesting times, and I'm excited to be able to bring this particular topic to you during these particularly interesting times. I am working from home today, and so you've got me from my home office. I'm Greg Weiss, the lead consultant for Career 365, and a number of you on the webinar today will have interacted with me, and I have had the pleasure of interacting with you. So I look forward to definitely taking your questions as we progress. I want to do a little bit of the housekeeping before we get into the main presentation today. And I'm going to ask if you can just have a okay thumbs up in the chat. I'm getting an okay that, in fact, you can hear me. So housekeeping over. Let's get into the presentation. And it's one which is a common question, because clearly we're living through interesting times. And before we get into the main guts of the presentation, I guess, I do want to let you know that I'm extremely proud of these three books that have been written by yours truly, and they're available now. And they're in order here. Career Clarity, I believe that you really have to know what it is that you want to go for before you then start to network. And then about how to have career success. And if you look at the bylines in all these books, it's how to find career fulfillment in Career Clarity, then how to unlock the hidden job market, not just rely only on traditional routes like recruitment firms, and then finally how to succeed in your new job, meaning how can you actually make sure that you get past your probation period. It's like giving birth to a baby. These books have each taken easily 9 months to write alone, and a lot of the content that you'll have within your modules as participants in our program. But notwithstanding, you might like this in written form. And if you'd like to, then just send your email to inquiries. We can talk about how you can get a copy of your own. Okay, I want to talk to you about the environment that we're in, and I might actually just turn off the camera so I'm not distracting you here. Let me just do that. Yep, done. Okay, so with regards to Vuca, what is Vuca? Vuca is a term that's been coined by the US military and more recently the global business community. And we are working in and we are subject to an increasingly VUCA environment. Now, what's that graphic on the right? It actually comes from my book, The Graphic Artist on my book, and it's a whirlpool, and there are two people being sucked down into the funnel of a whirlpool. Okay, and so VUCA is a term coined by the US military, more recently the global business community, and many describe our lives, businesses, and the global economy now as a VUCA environment, or hey, it's crazy out there, as Nathan Bennett and James Lamone put it in a Harvard Business Review article where it was first brought into mainstream business. So what is VUCA? And I hear you ask me, what the heck is that? And those 4 bullet points there talk about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Let me go through each in point. Volatility is the speed in which industry and the global economy has recently changed. And this was inevitable with fluctuations in demand, but also supply chains. Uncertainty, well, we now live in an uncertain environment in terms of how we can expect to live our lives amid often changing restrictions. Okay, I'm going to use the word COVID, but changing restrictions and how we now work and when the economy will sustainably recover. Complexity, it's been a complex balancing act to protect the health of people, but also attempt to safeguard the economy of entire nations. So many industries have been unable to operate at all or as usual. And then there's ambiguity. Ambiguity is all around the news. What's fact versus opinion have made life on a daily basis difficult to interpret. I mean, we're going through an ambiguous time at the moment, post-US elections, for example, where, I mean, who's won? The media have called it out. They've still got court cases. I mean, we're talking about significant uncertainty out there. And in these types of situations, our connectivity and access to continuous media coverage can be beneficial, but it can also be a burden. After all, it isn't just the virus that's contagious, but also panic, the spread of misinformation and poor decision-making as well. The media can, if you let it, fuel these fires in your mind. So this is your reality, that you're working, that we all working within a Vuca environment. And because of these drivers, seriously, long-term employment isn't the norm anymore. So if you've worked for a long time, as a number of you I know have actually worked for a long time in your respective professions and industries, that's not going to be something that I can guarantee you moving forward. It's not a guaranteed whatsoever. What I can guarantee you about is increased Vuca. And that's why I advocate the idea of long-term employability. This means that your focus is on evolving your skills throughout your working life so that you remain employable instead of maintaining the traditional focus on having a long-term employment contract. So I want to emphasize this. It's about long-term employability rather than long-term employment. So at first glance, it may appear strange, but I am going to ask you just to think about what have you done to capitalize on this situation that you're in. And when the main thing on your hands right now is that that you've got is time, you may have the perfect opportunity to work on some employability skills, some enhanced employability, not just for now or the next job you're looking for, but for the extent of your working life so that you stand out in the workforce for the long term. And I want to make sure that you can really think a little bit about that moving forward. It's a very key point, and I've been writing about and talking about long-term employability for the last, let me think, probably for the last 30 years. I'm aging myself here, but it's a point in case. What is the boundaryless career? And one thing I'd like to actually do before we move into this is I'd like to actually encourage you to think about something, that is to remain in the situation that you're in at this particular point in time. What I'd encourage you to do is to remain open to a whole bunch of different ideas that may come through to you. So the look of success doesn't always stay the same for an industry, for a society, or for you personally, so that you don't pass by any career opportunities outside the traditional model of employment. I'd like you to give some thought to two models of vocational development and challenge. And so I'm going to challenge your mindset to enter more flexibility. And that's where it comes into the boundaryless career. Hard to say, but it's not a concept that I've come up with. It's a concept which was coined by other experts. But let me just explain what I mean by boundaryless career. And it's with this career model, you realize there's more to working life than the 3D box that you see here of a traditional career trajectory: to go to work, to go to school, I should say, to go to work, and then to retire. You see, there are different paths as a possibility for your life. And if you aren't fulfilled in a particular type of work or with a specific employer, say, then you know it's acceptable for you to move on to another. Now, clearly, for those of you who are going through this program, you're going to be looking at things generally, and that is that it's okay to go to work, go to school, go to work and retire, but work needs to have a better fit for your values and interests rather than believing that you owe your loyalty to one employer. Now, this loyalty is not being, is no longer a factor for you as a participant going through this program. It's been foisted on you. But, and so moving into that, I want to actually encourage you to think about an option one on this boundaryless career. And then when you have a boundaryless career, you're also willing to pivot if you find a shortage of opportunity in one direction. And a number of you that I'm dealing with have in fact found that. And increasingly within this Vuca environment in which we're working, that's going to be more and more the case. But it doesn't mean opportunities don't abound. Most importantly, in a boundaryless career, which is option one, you understand that this is not a failure, but to have a successful career with absolutely no limits. Now, what do I mean by option two? And that's what do you want, which is a self-directed career. And the traditional career mindset can often cause you to feel a lack of control over your own career because the pathway is already set in stone. But with a more flexible and proactive mindset, you have a sense of self-direction. And that's what I'd like to encourage you to think about as a participant going through our program. You feel the power to express your own values within your position, and this helps you feel intrinsically rewarded. When that happens, you feel a close tie between your work and your personal identity. And this is some of the work that we work on when we work together, is helping you find out what gets you going, what's your career-enriched spot, what excites you. And when you are self-directed in your career, it matters not how others judge you and your accomplishments. It only matters how you feel about what you've achieved, because you are the only one who can judge your own success. Okay, now I was having a chat with my own coach yesterday. I have a coach. In fact, I have two coaches, but I have one coach where I was talking about my own satisfaction in certain things as well. And yes, I go through my own ups and downs about some things. And looking at that last thing that I've said, which is you are the only one who can judge your own success. It may not be money that you're looking for. It may be meaning. It may be purpose. It may be an expression of your own values. It may be to leave a legacy. But all those things is what I'm actually encouraging you to think about. Okay. So before we go into anything else, I just want to help look at some things to do with your own mindset, if I can. And here are some simple steps to improve your outlook coming up. But even before we get to those, even when you start to understand the in-there mechanisms at work when you're dealing with, say, occupational loss, it can be difficult to keep these in front of mind when you're feeling a sense of struggle. A holistic approach to your life at this time is totally crucial. And instead of just focusing on a solution to the problem, i.e., say, finding a job, you should concentrate on yourself as a whole. So I want to repeat that. So what did I say? It was a holistic approach to your life at this time is very important. So just instead of focusing on a solution to the problem, which is what most of us are looking for here in going through an outplacement program, which is finding a job, I suggest that you elevate your thinking a little bit, which is concentrating on you as a whole. And here are some strategies to help you anticipate success and stay on a healthy life track. So this is the very first one I'd like to talk to you about, which is do whatever it takes to feel strong and fit. And this is contextualizing ahead of about the main topic. But I did want to share this with you, and that is that do whatever it takes to feel strong and fit. And what I mean by that is that might include doing something special for your family, continuing with your regular daily run, or establishing a new healthy habit that fits often changing conditions. So whatever that might look for you, I suggest that you do it. Physical resilience has a lot to do with mental and emotional resilience. No matter how much you want to, just spending time on the couch day after day isn't going to help you feel any stronger. The second one is around surrounding yourself with positivity. Now, I like to read books. I find I draw inspiration from people who have gone through adversity and then I can learn from them. You might find that through TED videos or inspirational videos. I'm currently reading an amazing book by a woman called Edith Eger, Eger, who survived the horrors of concentration camp in Auschwitz and became a woman who was one of the few people who recognized post-traumatic stress disorder and, in fact, coined that term. So if you want to read her book, it's Edith Eger, and I draw inspiration from those things. And her book is called The Choice, and you spell it Eger is her name. It's readily available in bookstores, but also on Kindle. Okay, now on this thing about positivity, keep your mental resilience on track, and I'd suggest that you avoid surrounding yourself with negative people and being plugged into news, that's typically negative, and social media, which is typically also just a time waste. That's my value judgment. Misery loves company, I say, and while you must accept your negative feelings, it's crucial that those around you don't exacerbate them. So the more you're around negative people, the worse you're going to feel. It's very, very important for you to be able to create the most important real estate on the planet, and that's the 6 inches between your ears. Okay, I just want to make sure I can pronounce that correctly. So instead, I suggest that you reach out to those in your network who have a positive influence on you. They probably want to help you feel better, and you should let them try. People in your social network also have the benefit of an outside perspective too, so they may be able to see opportunities that you've overlooked. It's the important thing of dealing with networking and being around positive people. So the news cycle is incessant and typically negative in tone. Social media can often breed internal dissatisfaction, looking at everyone else's curated life. Isn't that the truth? And at this time, in order to best support you, limit your exposure to social media and the news media, and then extend kindness to others. Now, this can be a time that you're tempted to feel a little introspective. Some people might call it a bit selfish, and you don't want to concentrate. And you do need, however, I should say, you do need to concentrate on yourself, of course. But being helpful to anyone who crosses your path can go a long way to lift your mood and help others see you in the right light. Who knows what will come your way, offers from others, introductions, or even a discovery of something you might like to pursue as a job. I only heard yesterday of somebody who did something for somebody else, and they really liked the way that person interacted, and they actually offered them a job. So that was just, so volunteering or doing something for other people or expressing some form of kindness, you never know how well that might go, and some people might call that karma points. Whatever it is, that works. It works lovely. Embrace humor to deal with stress or tension. There are hormones that come out that get released by a good laugh, and we know that a laugh will shift any mood. So whether you make time to laugh every day, you need to make time for that. There's no better way to jolt you out of a negative thought pattern. That could mean watching a funny video, playing a game with your kids, or telling your spouse a funny story. I like the idea of watching a Seinfeld episode. I like the idea of watching that really random thing with River Wilson, where she compares a show about the last one to laugh, where there are these professional comedians. It may be looking at, and again, I'm going to age myself, but I absolutely love watching Everybody Loves Raymond as well. It's just so funny coming from being married and identifying a lot with what goes on in married life, etc., etc. Whatever is your pathway, just laugh. Fill your days with purposeful activity, and purposeful activity helps you create meaning from your life. It makes you feel like you're contributing to society, and it plays a significant role in building your own self-worth. When you lose purposeful activity from your life, you feel as though you're floundering, and without the enforced activity that comes with a job, You might need to remind yourself of other ways to contribute, whether that's to a community cause, to homeschooling your children, or finding new ways to provide support to your household. So one way I suggest that you can create purposeful activity right now is to treat finding a job as your new job. So, and it's always helpful to set goals for a job search, and it's no different right now. But to boost your confidence and maintain patience, your goals should be based on action rather than results. For example, I suggest people to have something like, I will send out 10 applications this week, rather than I'll have a job by the end of the month. Another way of filling your time is with volunteering or charity work. It's proven that people who work for the social impact of volunteering, as I said earlier, remain happier, more productive, and engaged with life. This is so important if you find you are in transition from one career to another. Point 6 is maintain a daily routine. Before we go through, I had a comment from Barry on who's attending today's webinar, and he writes, with humor and laughing, I suggest, Greg, that you also allow yourself to laugh at yourself. Well, ain't that great, Barry? Absolutely, it does help. You said it helps, and it does help. So self-compassion, I think people call that, and but also just not taking things too heavily, but just to actually have a good laugh at how ridiculous at times you can be, or how you misstepped, or whatever it is. So thanks for contributing that, Barry. Very much appreciate that. Maintaining a daily routine, what's that all about? It's essential for your mental health to have something to get out of bed of. They say that that's really critical, and frankly it is. People who sadly are depressed will stay in bed for a long, long time. We've seen it with people that we're close to, no doubt, and like we may have even been there ourselves. Some people may feel an initial elation at not having to get up for work, but this won't last long, particularly when you may not be allowed to do all the things you did before the pandemic. The very essence of a routine is vital. It's structure and familiarity, and it helps you make sense of your everyday life. When you don't have a routine, you lack direction. This can bring on anxiety, but also means that you need to rely on willpower. That's important, willpower, to get anything done rather than force of habit. When you lose momentum, it's just that much harder to get going again, just like that feeling of trying to get back into the swing of work after an incredible holiday break. The habits and patterns that stood you well in your previous role may no longer be a good fit, like stopping off at a favorite restaurant or a cafe on the way to work, but you can tweak it to fit your life right now and rely on it to propel you through each day. So all I'm suggesting is that here you definitely want to have something that where you don't have any structure to give you structure. Okay, it's important. And finally, I want to talk about focus on what you've achieved. And if you consider everything that you've accomplished and all your contributions during your career to date, then that's going to be a really positive thing for you. You remind yourself of all the things that have enriched your life so far. It helps to counter negative thoughts that may deplete your energy. Even when you leave, your achievements should not be discounted. Just what I'm saying here is that when if you've left a job, it's really important not to get caught up with all of that, but to actually step back and really honor yourself about all the things that you have done. In this environment that we're facing, most people are in between things, not on their own doing, but on account of the circumstances that are presented to them. So what I'm saying here is that don't discount any of the achievements that you made at your work, most recently or previously. Just know that your layoff doesn't negate everything that came before your layoff. So if you want to look at any of these areas, I'm suggesting that there are some exercises that you can go through, and we've provided those within your modules for you to be able to actually do. And so let's go into the whole thing to do with pivoting or relaunching yourself. And the diagram here is just a way of saying, let's just go through the same track, relaunching, or let's potentially pivot, and either of those are suitable. So let me just take you through the choice of this, which is to pivot or to relaunch. And if you've been if you're in the situation where you're at this particular point, having been, say, let go or made redundant, might feel like a dead end. But what you've actually reached is a fork in the road. And you can see that in the diagram. There are different shaped forks, but there are different forks in the road. It's good news because, as you'll see, no matter what direction you choose to take, there are options. So what are those options? As I've got here, there are two here: to pivot or to relaunch. Pivoting is if you want to find a new job which is within the realm of your previous one, or relaunching if your previous or current role is unviable for the future and or unfulfilling, and you want to explore an entirely new career. So pivoting, again, I just want to recap, in my definition, is if you want to find a new job which is within the realm of your previous one, or relaunching is if your previous or current role is unviable for the future and or unfulfilling, and you want to explore an entirely new career. Let's go bit deeper into pivoting, because pivoting is ideal if you want to make the most of your existing skill set and you're unable to find work doing the same position you held before. Pivoting isn't a complete career makeover, but it's an adjustment you make if something isn't working now or for much longer. It's about taking the core ingredients of what you did before and putting on a new spin on it. So the best part is, if it doesn't stick, you just pivot again, because it's all about taking small steps in the right direction. Now, it's often best to think about pivoting in the context of a jobs cluster, and this also gives you a better chance of success than focusing on a single position when you're job hunting. So let's talk some examples so that I can help push this home. Okay, someone who takes care of elderly parents might move into professional aged care help. You might not think that that's actually going to be possible, but it's very possible, subject to accreditations, etc. But notwithstanding, it's possible. People will say, have you had any prior experience? And you can actually say, I'm interested in moving into that particular area because I've looked after, say, elderly parents, and I have an openness now to professional aged care help, and you can get professional accreditations in that area. What about an Uber driver who may become a delivery driver for a supermarket? And we've seen thousands of people during COVID go out of taxi/Uber driving into driving Coles and Woolworths delivery vans for home delivery stuff, haven't we? What about storemen from a warehouse environment who might pivot to front of house packing in a supermarket? And we've seen, again, you've probably seen the news around that, but people have moved into the enormous need of packing in supermarkets because of the uptick in home delivery when COVID was at its height. And certainly now we've seen that home deliveries continue to be very popular. What about a nurse performing blood tests under a Red Cross contract that could pivot to nursing anywhere within the hematology field? And I know people who are attending this particular webinar come from that exact profession and have done just that. What about a journalist becoming a social media content writer? So these are some tangible examples of pivoting. So if you're highly skilled or experienced in one area, an excellent option for pivoting presents itself. This option requires you to take what you know and back yourself by becoming a consultant, a coach, or a mentor. Sharing your expertise and wisdom with others can be extremely rewarding career and direction. So I know one of you is involved in, has been a prior experience in working within the council area. And that comes with its unique insights And so without mentioning any particular names, you know who I'm talking to, it may be that you might say, you know what, I can't get employed this way. Maybe what I'm going to be end up doing is coaching on people who need to have best practice in that same side of industry. So you set yourself up as a coach or a consultant or as a mentor. So if you look back at your top strengths in over time, and if you've gone through the Slimpact model, which is in your modules, and you've determined what your strengths are and your competencies are, you could see how you could pivot in these particular areas. And sometimes we end up being highly experienced in things that were never in the job description in the first place, but have become part of a role that you've had that you've then taken for granted. And these are nuggets of gold when it comes to pivoting your career. I'd like you to think of some examples that may get you started thinking about this. May be how work has evolved as part of the pandemic, remote work, time management, organization of spaces, systems setups, online delivery of services, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to suggest that what you do is you actually have a look at that and at those ideas. What about the idea of relaunching? Well, relaunching, again, it's another fork in the road. Relaunching is ideal if your previous type of job is no longer a viable option. Perhaps that industry is likely to take too long to recover, such as the travel industry or hospitality might be, for example, or the industry is going to transform in a way that will leave you out. So examples of that, I was only talking to some people out of the events and clubs industry today, and they, as we would appreciate, they've had to close their dining facilities considerably and rationalize that. So a significant number of stand downs and layoffs, sadly, in that area. And that's going to take quite some time for it to come back to its glory days. So maybe you're worried that when things do kick off again, you'll be up against vast competition that's younger and more dynamic. So relaunching is also ideal if you're completing the exercises that we've got in our program, and after careful analysis, you've realized that your current or most recent job is unfulfilling in a whole range of aspects. Perhaps you've gained clarity and can point to particular factors why it isn't a good fit for you and how it isn't satisfying our Slimpact, SLIMPACT framework. And you've got that in your deciding your career directions modules. So with that, what I'm going to suggest is that it may come as a relief because it provides some guidance for what you might want to seek from here. For example, you may have realized that you love the industry, but the type of work doesn't allow for development, or there's a small part of the job that you find intensely satisfying, so you decide to explore other positions where those really intensely satisfying aspects play a much more dominant role. So it's not clear cut, but we do have some exercises that I'm going to be directing you to have a look at within the modules that you all have access to, and it can help you make some of those decisions a little easier. If you hear a dog barking, I'm working from home. There is one nearby. My apologies. So the next aspect I'd like to talk to you about is a cycle of deliberate and emergent approaches. And you can see here that there's a deliberate strategy and emergent strategy. And what do I mean by this? So Clayton Christensen, one of the deepest thinkers, he reminded me very much of Stephen Covey, if you've ever read any of his books. But Stephen Covey or Covey, Clayton Christensen suggests two approaches to a career should play a role at different times in your life. Those are deliberate and emergent. So I would suggest that if you're really interested in career clarity and getting a really good idea, then a deliberate strategy is probably what you're wanting to pursue. When it comes to your future career, you want to know what the right answer is and what to do about it. But it's not always that simple, and that's a good thing. A deliberate strategy is ideal if you are clear on which outlet satisfies your motivating factors, the things also that just make you feel satisfied at work, and that you can safely pursue that particular approach. Now, if this isn't for you, then you may, like many of us in this current economic climate, you might be like us, a number of people who need to use an emergent strategy. And what I mean by us is that I'm dealing with a number of people who really just want to find something and then discover if they're really happy with that. And that means making an informed decision about your career under the guise of an experiment. And this is a really good way to play with things, is to experiment or play. Now, it's costly in some respects, you might say, but an experiment is something that you might go on like a testing the waters strategy, or trialing before you buy, so to speak. So it may be that you go in and you say, I'm going to go in for a 3-month contract and test this one out, or I might go on a short-term contract, or however long it is, but it's not like a all-in type approach. So if you're taking it under the guise of an experiment, and if that experiment doesn't go exactly to plan, then you pivot, either by taking an opportunity presented to you, or finding ways to build in more of your motivating factors, which you will find out as you go deeper into the modules and the exercises and so on and so forth. So an emergent strategy can be exciting. It can help you discover new pathways for your life that you've never ever anticipated, and learning a lot about yourself in the process. So remember too, that even if you have a deliberate strategy and it works for a time, you'll likely go through cycles of deliberate and emergent strategies throughout your working life. So don't get too caught up on finding that perfect deliberate strategy now. And that's really, really important. So I think that side of things from Clayton Christensen is a really important point of distinction. As a result of, let me summarize at this particular point. If you've gone through and decide your career direction, and you've determined what your slim pack is, and you've determined what your career enriched spot is, then a deliberate strategy is one particular approach. An emergent strategy is a more playful one. You can experiment with it. Maybe something's going to really appeal to you. An example of something like this is that I'm volunteering for a not-for-profit organization, and it's been really troublesome, to be frank, for a fair bit of time. But the more and more I'm growing into helping the organization out, the more and more I'm realizing about my own strengths of communication and reaching out across to different types of people, and how I can actually help build bridges amongst different factions. And that's something that's emerging for me. It's not a career thing, but it's an emerging experiment that I'm seeing. Now, there haven't been times when I haven't really seriously thought of tossing the whole damn thing in. And I mean the whole damn thing in. But then if I move through this and still consider it to be much more of a playful experiment, then it's a lot less invested in emotionally in it. And I'm able to actually just sort of discover what works well. I've had a question here about any volunteer work will assist gain skills that I'm referring to. Yep. So we'll circle back to that actually with that particular point if I can. Let's just move into what careers are looking promising right now. Now, according to an article that I've recently read in Business Insider Australia on the 30 best high-paying jobs of the future, there are two standout fields, which are tech and medical. I'm not in any of them, but some of you on this webinar are. Some of the jobs that include computer systems analysts, systems software developers, application software developers, dentists, registered nurses, physical therapists, medical and health services managers, physicians and surgeons. Now, lawyers, accountants and teachers for both primary and secondary schools are also in future higher demand. So lawyers, accountants and teachers for both primary and secondary schools are also in high future demand, not lawyers and accountants. I didn't take a breath properly there. And the good news is that some other jobs that make the list only require a high school diploma or equivalent. So if, for example, you can't pivot into one of the medical fields because you don't have industry qualifications, you might look at relaunching with one of these options. For example, only for example, plumbing, steam fitting, pipe fitting, wholesale and manufacturing sales representatives, first line supervisors of construction trades and extraction workers. Now, I mentioned Business Insider Australia, and that's the second bullet point on this particular slide. There are other forums, which there are other websites that I want to bring your attention to. I really value Business Insider. I also really like how the World Economic Forum addresses what we're finding at this particular point in time. And there are articles that are the top articles, the top businesses or top professions. Let me just emerging technologies. It may be around. Let me just see. I've got this. There's an article that I'm just looking at right here, which is called "This is the Human Impact of COVID-19 and How Business Can Help." And what I can do is I can send you all, or have this as part of the show notes on the upload on YouTube, and I'll make sure that we actually do that. But the bottom line is that with any of this, is that you can get into the World Economic Forum and see trends lists, McKinsey and otherwise. I've got McKinsey and Co. are always good. Harvard Business Review is very good. But I find that the curated list often is fantastic in LinkedIn, where you might find just the topics under the hashtags future of work and the like. So LinkedIn is a brilliant resource for looking at these things. So I'd be suggesting that if you have a look at any of your ideas about where you want to go to pivot or to relaunch, to have a deliberate or an emerging strategy, that these are helpful, but in the context of saying that this is what's going to be safe moving forward. Now, before actually we round up for some questions, what I did want to do was to just try and draw one analogy, and that is that, say, in the relaunch. So let's just go here back to this particular diagram about the fork in the road. Here we go here. Okay, let me just go here. And that is that let me see if I can draw this. Okay, whiteboard on. And I'm not overly great with a drawing thing. Yeah, you can see here. Imagine you actually might have a strategy where here's you, and some people might say, hey, I'm involved with, say, nursing, and I want to open up a cafe. I don't find that the gap here is very considerable. They're very, very different skills. Alternatively, as I've given an example, if, however, you go side by side and you say here, I'm a nurse, and what I want to be able to do is move into medical devices because I've used them and I get a sense of what they are, then you can go from being a nurse, for example, to getting involved with sales or account management. When you develop yourself here, it may be that things move. You grab the nursing skills, the account management in medical devices, and it may end up actually being that you become, say, something to do with hospital management. It may be something like that, or it may be around, if you were a salesperson and successful in that, it may come down to sales management. Does that make sense that I'm drawing this particular way? It's not about jumping all the way across to here and not relying on any of these skills here. This is a quantum jump where you'd be resetting from zero as opposed to building on side-by-side skills. Let me turn off the whiteboard here. It's the first time I've ever used that, and I'm hoping that actually that worked out well. So as we go through, I want to summarize where we were at and encourage that also, if you'd like to go a little deeper and have any hard copy books, these are now available for you to buy and to own. there's the email address for you. I'm very proud of the work. There are action books that are associated with this. The career networking has been recently uploaded into your modules, so that you've got that available to you as well. But sometimes people like the idea of sharing this content with people who are going through a similar thing, and that's what I'm encouraging you maybe to ask colleagues and people you're close to think about with any of these books. What are your next steps? Go deeper into modules, get more deeply engaged in the participant support group, book in a coaching session with me or anybody else that you're dealing with. And as I said, just register to buy the books if you want. Okay, questions. Hey, I got a comment saying that whiteboard works. I'm happy with that. If there are any questions that you might have, I'm more than happy to field a few before we wrap up, because it's close to the top of the hour as we have it right now. Okay, hopefully you got something out of that. I wanted to make sure that you really understood about creating your mindset and helping you understand that. I wanted to help you understand what a Vuca environment is, that it's really more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, more ambiguous. So I wanted to make sure from that perspective that you understood that question. How do you view temp work as opposed to volunteer work? Well, they're both excellent avenues to explore for self-fulfillment. I think the important thing is, if you're taking temp work, and that is that temp work allows you to have it temporarily. It might be only for some hours in a day or for a short time, but it doesn't preclude you for something that may be coming up. So temp work's fantastic because it'll keep you busy. It'll give you a sense of purpose. It'll also allow the organization to try you before you buy. So in the case of, say, somebody doing admin type work, if you get into a short-term contract and you're there to replace that person, say on a temp basis, and they really like you, there's a chance that they're going to offer you to stay with that organization. And that could end up also then being an emergent strategy for you, where you determine more so what it is that you actually want to get from that particular job. Versus volunteer work, very fulfilling, where you volunteer in something that's meaningful to you. So I would encourage that no matter what you do, you don't stay at home, that you work in a temp way, you work in volunteer work. That volunteer work is important, that's meaningful, that's central to something you believe in, because volunteering can be uplifting. It can also be extremely draining. So that is a great question. Okay, another. I love learning as one of my values. I'm a continual learner. That's actually one of the reasons why I wrote those books, is to help to articulate what I've learned over time and to share that. What I wanted to do was to also just encourage you, if you like any of Clayton Christensen's work, he's actually been, he's absolutely superb. And you might find him in the Harvard Business Review. You may find that, and I'm just looking up a couple of his books here, Clayton Christensen, and he's got a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, and it's absolutely sensational. There's also stuff in the Harvard Business Review top 10 must-read articles, and let me just get to that one as well. And I'm just trying to remember which one he's got here, but the bottom line is that he's absolutely sensational as a writer. So you might draw on some strength there. I think the important thing as we wrap up today is to just to make sure that whatever it is, to have an open mind. and to work on the 6 inches between your ears, which is the most important real estate on the planet, because everything comes out of what you're thinking, and based on that, just to maintain an open, flexible mind with a positive attitude. But the more and more you help people who are less fortunate than you, the better it is. Okay. I've got a question here. What if the role, before, I appreciate you actually asking this, one of the people attending is, what if the role you were doing previously was so niche and in some eyes limiting that future prospective employers may not value that experience? Well, that's an extremely good question. So thanks for asking that. Maybe you could tap into the chat what your role was that was so limiting, but I'd like to encourage that you think a little bit more broadly around what it is that you've developed over time. What were those competencies that you've developed? So there are so how you develop your life competencies and your accomplishments is in fact in our Slimpact model, where you're not just looking at only what you've done on a technical level, but there are some other areas that you've been able to develop as far as your strengths are concerned. And so they are functional skills and accomplishments. They are functional skills, formal skills, and personality skills. And so you may be of a mindset where you might say it's so niche or so limiting, but I'd like to actually get you to elevate just 1 or 2 levels up, so that there are those skills that, although you've been using in one particular area, could be re-pivoted into another. I'm going to suggest here that you and I talk offline in a one-on-one coaching time with that, so we can more deeply dive that, if I can help you. You've got some help here from one of the other participants here saying, I've always been tagged as the accountant. I always expand that to include the other aspects associated with this that are much more broad. A brilliant answer from a fellow participant on this webinar. Couldn't have answered that better. And I'm delighted to see that type of advice. These are also the types of advices or questions that you can pose within the LinkedIn participant group. But I'm definitely don't think that in terms of your roles, and I can see both of you chatting there, you actually have somewhat similar roles previously. So in terms of your role, I think I understand you're coming from an educational perspective, and also in terms of who qualifies for grants or financial assistance. Well, just by mentioning the word grants alone is something that you could actually look a little bit more broadly about, and that could be helpful as well. But I'm going to encourage that we both that we work offline to help you expand your thinking here. But I do want to thank one of your fellow participants here in the webinar for, in fact, sharing that. Are there any others before we go? All right. If not, I want to just thank you very much for spending some time with me today. I enjoyed interacting with you. It's not my intention with these webinars or any time that I'm interacting with you to be so one-directional. Webinars can be a little bit difficult to host with a bombardment of questions, but I do think that is absolutely fantastic. Just in summarizing here, there has been a further thing about just alert you to some of the chats that are going on. Please have a look at both those. We'll go offline and make sure we can try and capture some of those and so that we actually have those to email to both of you. In the meantime, I am going to be encouraging that we'll have this up on YouTube, and there'll be some show notes. And thank you so much for being part of today's webinar. All the best, and please make sure you do book in some coaching time with me.